Are you trying to establish your brand as a thought leader? Start a podcast, invite industry experts to be guests on your show, and watch your brand become the prime resource for decision makers in your industry. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to another Behind the Curtains episode of B2B Growth. I'm here today with Logan Lyles from our team. Logan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome, James. How are you, man?
I am fantastic. So if you're new to the show, I want to just explain a little bit. I like to explain these episodes. We got some feedback from somebody early on saying like, hey, these things you do on the weekend are great. But the first time I heard one, I was really confused as to what was happening because it wasn't our typical interview. The interview with a VP of marketing, CMO at a fast growing B2B tech company. What we do with these weekend episodes, we don't put an episode number in the headline for a reason, because we want you to be able to visually see what are the solo episodes, what are the interviews. Some people like the interviews better. Some people like the solo episodes better. These behind the curtains episodes better. But these weekend episodes, it's usually myself and someone from the team, usually Logan, talking about just different things that are happening in the business behind the curtains, the things we're learning, the ways we're growing as an organization. And so, yeah, we're a bootstrapped, podcast agency. We're growing really, really fast. And I think a lot of people are interested in what we're doing to achieve that growth, how we're going about managing it. And so that is a little bit of context for this style of episode. But the actual conversation that we're going to have today, Logan, is something I'm really excited about because it's something I learned from Ryan Deiss at Hypergrowth a couple weeks ago, Drift Conference. And he talked about Ryan Deiss from during his, it wasn't a keynote, because there's a bunch of different like keynote quality speakers, but during Ryan Deiss's talk, he talked about this concept of the character diamond. And I thought it was fascinating because he said, everybody's talking about story. You got to tell your story. And he said, story is great, but what people crave are characters. And when he unpacked that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Like, you love Star Wars, but the thing you crave is Luke or Leia or Chewie, or, it's the character that you really fall in love with. And so Ryan's talk was really focusing on, how do you create the character for your brand? And where I thought he was going to go with the direction of his talk is actually a little bit different than where he actually went. I don't think he had publicly talked about the character diamond before, but essentially in his talk, he talked about creating it for the logo. I thought the way he was going to go was, creating characters within your brand. And I actually talked about this to him, like turning your team members into the characters of your brand was where he was going to go. He didn't go there, but I talked to him about it at Inbound actually the next day. And he said that once you establish the character that is your brand or your logo, then he said the next evolution of that actually is to identify people within your organization that align to the character of your brand. And then you empower them and almost like celebritize them. And because they exhibit qualities of your character of your brand, those people now become extensions of that character. So it actually is like pretty aligned. But I want to spend the bulk of this episode, Logan, talking about kind of the direction I thought he was going to go and the importance that I think it is, or how important I think it is to really empower and equip the people on your team to focus on their personal brand. And so as we jump into that, I've been saying something a lot lately. I wrote about it on LinkedIn, but I've been saying this a lot internally. This statement of your company's brand is the sum of the personal brands of its people. And I really do believe that. I think that's a bold statement. You could probably poke holes in it and say, well, company like Oracle, does that really apply with that many employees? But I really do think in today's kind of social landscape, that at least in B2B, I can't speak as much to B2C. I think it probably doesn't apply actually to B2C as much, but I think in B2B, your company's brand is the sum of the personal brands of its people. And I just see so many companies neglecting, or even having folks that want to focus on their personal brand, push them down. And I just think it's too important, because like we're seeing benefits of what you're doing, of what other folks are doing on our team as they proactively put out content, and it's just bringing too much benefit. The biggest benefit that I want to get your thoughts on, Logan, because there's a recent story that's happened with somebody on our team, but the biggest benefit from a growth perspective, which is what this show is all about, is that when you empower and you resource people on your team to focus on their personal brand, that is expanding the reach of your brand, of your company, of your message, of your value prop. It's expanding the reach of what you do through your people exponentially. So when I was the only one posting on LinkedIn from Sweetfish Media, it was limited. I was able to get, a good amount of reach on my content, but I'm the only one doing it. When we brought you on, Logan, and you started creating content, we exponentially had more reach, because there's now two people creating content, engaging on LinkedIn, putting out, like really focusing on their personal brand. And as we grow moving forward, that's going to happen. But so many people are like, well, what if they leave? What if you invest in your people to focus on their personal brand and then they leave? Who cares? And in my opinion, anyway,
Right.
Logan, like, I don't care if they leave, because obviously I care if they leave because I care about them as people, but like they expanded our reach as a company while they were with us.
Absolutely.
And so they brought us value in their personal brand while they were with us. And that's awesome. Like, and if they go and do that for another company, great. But like, why not have that expanded reach while they're on your team? And so I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind. I mean, you touched on it there before I came on board. I remember one of the things you and I were talking about, and you asked me point blank, coming into this sales role, are you okay with continuing to work on producing content, putting yourself out there, building your personal brand? And you use the phrase, I'm really looking forward to having two strong mouthpieces in the market, aligned, saying similar things, but sharing a different perspective. And that I was really excited about that personally. And we've seen benefits from it. I was interviewing a current client of ours just last week, and she mentioned something to me just kind of off the cuff, but I really, it resonated with me. She mentioned, James really built the business case for us to do a podcast over time through the content I was seeing on LinkedIn. It wasn't one singular event. It was him building the case through post after post, interaction after interaction. And like you said, since I've been on board and we've been doing that as a team now and growing that, then it has exponential benefits. And then the other day, just a real tangible story as we've continued to grow the team, Andrew has moved into this director of operations role and has been doing a great job on that part of the business. Not a marketing function, not a primary sales function. His role is operations. Well, the last week you woke up to a text from him. I got an email from him early in the morning saying, I just got 2 leads coming inbound to me asking about our services. And me, as owning the sales function here, obviously I'm super excited. We've got another place that people are coming to us wanting to talk about our services, and it came from a post that he did on LinkedIn about what he's doing. And it probably, hopefully help some folks think through some operational processes that could apply to their business. But in the end, it was also getting our message, our name, and our brand out as a company. And it led directly to sales opportunities in my inbox.
I love that. I love that. Andrew is not on our marketing team. He is not on our sales team. He is our director of operations. And last week, what a tangible business result or a business case and a result of empowering your people to focus on their personal brand. I like 2 weeks ago, I told Andrew, I said, hey, as a part of your job description, because it's a new role that we've created for him, I said, as a part of your operations role, I want you writing content on LinkedIn at least once a week. And by making that a part of his job function, I didn't say he had to write about podcasting, and he didn't write about podcasting. He didn't even write about our service at all. He wrote about the things that he's implementing in our business from an operations perspective, workflow, like how we get projects across the finish line quicker, efficiency things, like things that operations people would be interested in. And he's writing about that, which is genuinely engaging content based on encouragement that I'd been giving him and resources, which we'll talk about later, resources that I've been giving him. And as a result, very quickly after he started writing content, I think he's written 2 or 3 posts so far since he's been on the team, he gets these 2 leads in. And I just think, and one of them was from a very large account that I hadn't even considered, being able to crack, but they came inbound because we now have a third person in Andrew. Really, Ryan has started doing it now too. So we went from one person, me being the primary mouthpiece for Sweetfish, to now having 4 mouthpieces in the market. Imagine if you're listening to this right now and you have a team of 100 or 150, and not everybody is going to be comfortable doing this, and there's some nuance there to like twisting people's arms to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. But I would actually err on the side of making it a part of the job description, to have not just encourage with your words and say like, oh, you should focus on your personal brand, but actually make it a part of people's jobs, because there are tangible business results. We're experiencing it firsthand. So to the recruiting point, to what you talked about earlier, Logan, like as we were kind of onboarding you and kind of the month leading up to you coming on board, I said, really want you to own, like, go all in with your personal brand, even more than what you've already been doing at your other job. But I think that was huge in recruiting people that care about their personal brand. One of the things that stood out to me about you when we hired you was you were already putting out content. Now, I knew you were in an environment where that was pretty tough to do, but you were still doing it. You figured out like angles and different content topics to talk about, even though it wasn't necessarily encouraged at your old company, you were still doing it. And I thought, man, this guy gets the power of personal brand. I don't want to have to convince somebody that they need to focus on their personal brand if I can hire for it based on a track record of them already focusing on it. So from a recruiting standpoint, I think that is huge. And then the second point to recruiting that I want to make is I think it actually gives you a competitive advantage from a recruiting perspective to invest in your team's personal brands. I think about us, we hire a lot of writers, we hire a lot of account managers, and those are, folks typically, mid 20s, relatively early in their career. I actually think by us taking a stance of we invest in our people's personal brands, we give them resources, we give them encouragement. We make it a part of their job description to focus on their personal brand, which is going to help their career long term. I think that separates you from other people that are fighting, from other companies that are fighting for the same talent that you're fighting for. It just creates a really strong differentiator if you are the company that's like, man, I'm going to go to these guys and they're actually going to resource and equip me to focus on my personal brand. And that's something that is going to help me for the rest of my career, whether I stay with this company 2 years or 10 years. So I think from a recruiting perspective, it's huge. What are your thoughts there, Logan?
I mean, I have to speak from the sales perspective. I was just listening to an interview last night on John Barrow's Make It Happen Mondays podcast, and he was talking about what do sales reps do when they're in an organization where they're not allowed to put stuff on social. It has to go through 3, spot checks, or marketing is the only one who can put content out in the market, and how do they adjust to the social landscape and social selling when they're not empowered to invest in their personal brand, to leverage their personal brand. So I think if you are growing a team and you are recruiting salespeople that get it, and that's what you want salespeople that get it, that understand modern selling, that can tell stories, that can leverage their strengths. If you're telling them that they're coming on board to not only, a great team and great culture, and we've got great product for you to sell and yada, 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 but you're also telling them and showing them how you're going to empower them to work on their personal brand, which, if they move on from you, that's okay. I mean, it's like, the old quote, the CFO says, what if we invest in people and they leave? And the CEO, that I think is more forward thinking, says, what if we don't and they stay? There's risks either way, but I think the benefit of bringing on great people where they feel invested in, especially in a sales role where there is a lot of churn, gives you the ability to recruit great people and, potentially keep them for longer. There's always risks on either side, but I think the benefits far outweigh those risks, especially within the sales function.
I love it. One thing that I was talking about with Miles Veth, he runs the Veth group, big on LinkedIn. If you're not following Miles, you absolutely should be. But I got to spend the weekend with him. He flew down from Connecticut, hung out with us in Orlando, and he was saying, he's kind of known as the cold calling king on LinkedIn because he's documented a couple days where he's done like 400 or 700 cold calls in a single day. And he said, because of those videos going viral, I've had a lot of people ask me to come into their organization and like cold call with their team to just prove to their team that it is actually possible to do more than 60 dials in a day. But he said, the reason I don't like that that's kind of the brand that is starting to shape around me is because I actually don't think cold calling works most of the time. I think most millennials think it never works. And he said, I absolutely think that it can work. But he's like, the way I've grown my own business is not through cold calling. It's actually been through social. It's been through putting out relevant content. It's been through engaging with people. That's where all of my leads for my own business are coming from. It's not because I'm making 300 dials a day or 700 dials a day. I'm actually getting business from the stuff that you and I are talking about right now, Logan. Investing in he's investing in his personal brand. And so I think if you're looking for folks these young, sharp sales folks that understand what Miles understands, that like the actual deals that they're winning are not coming from the traditional activity that is being forced on them by leadership. It's coming by stuff that they're doing on their own time on LinkedIn or, other like social channels. That's stuff that's actually working anyway. So by just empowering your people to do something and being loud about that from a recruiting perspective, the savvy salespeople that are going, man, my company's like killing me every time I write something on LinkedIn, but I know that every time I write something on LinkedIn, I end up getting 3 or 4 leads out of it. This company over here is saying, hey, we actually empower that. We want you to do that. I'm going to go work for these guys. So I think it's huge. I want to spend the last part of this interview really giving some tangible, like, how do you operationalize this? It's one thing to say, empower and resource your people to focus on their personal brand, but how do you actually do it? I think, Logan, the first thing that was really smart that we did, that we created a standard LinkedIn headline that everyone on our team puts. I've seen other people do this. I think Drift actually does this. I think Lucid, maybe in Salt Lake City, I think they might do this too. But creating a consistent headline across all of your folks, especially the folks that are going to be putting out content. Our tagline is, we produce podcasts for B2B brands. That is very tight. It's very punchy. It is direct to the point. Like, you have to be very careful about what you make that statement be. It can't be too vague. It can't be too broad. But the reason why it's so important is because if you're creating these mouthpieces for your business, that headline shows up pretty much everywhere their name shows up.
Right,
so whether it's a comment, whether it's content, whether it's mobile, whether it's desktop, like that headline follows their name pretty much everywhere they go on LinkedIn. So if you're creating mouthpieces and let's say, Logan, if your headline on LinkedIn was Director of Partnerships of Sweetfish Media, that would not actually be as beneficial. You having all that visibility on LinkedIn because of all your activity there would not be as helpful, because what is Sweetfish Media? Like, what's that even mean? People know Logan, but they don't actually know what we do as a business. But because right next to your name, it says, we produce podcasts for B2B brands. And then we have a little time. Every single time. So it's constantly reinforcing. And that's the same thing with Andrew. Andrew's our director of operations, but it says Andrew Hurley, we produce podcasts for B2B brands. That's what shows every time he comments, every time he creates content. People are seeing that. And you can put other things on there. We have a little line after that says, Director of Operations and other things, co-host of B2B Growth, whatever. But the headline gets truncated. So that's why you want to make sure that your value statement that you come up with, that you're going to put in all your headlines, is short enough to where it doesn't get cut off. I think Josh Steinley on LinkedIn has a great one. He says, I coach executives to become influential. That is extremely tight. It's extremely focused. In his case, I think he might be the only kind of mouthpiece for that part of his business. He owns a couple different businesses. He's got an agency, and then he's got his coaching business. But be very thoughtful about what that value statement is, what that LinkedIn headline is going to be for everybody that you empower to create content on your team, because it is incredibly important, because it follows your name around everywhere. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The other piece, and kind of transitioning, now that you've done that, you've got your framework set up, you've got that value statement, you've asked everyone on your team to make that their LinkedIn headline. Now, you can't just empower your people to focus on their personal brand with your words. I do that. I talk to you, I talk to Ryan, I talk to Andrew about writing content, but I'm not just encouraging you with my words. I'm also giving you resources to do it. And so I remember you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, because we're getting an enormous amount of inbound, and you're on more and more sales calls every week, which is awesome. But you're like, James, like I want to keep up the momentum we're getting on LinkedIn. I'm just like, I'm running out of time in the week to do it. And we are not a culture where we're like expecting people to work 60-hour weeks by any means. So it's like, okay, I don't want you working 55, 60-hour weeks, and which is what's going to have to happen if you want to continue creating content and closing all these deals that you're closing. So you have carte blanche access to our entire writing team. If you want to partner with someone from our writing team, have a quick 10, 15-minute call about a topic that you're thinking about, have that writer create the post for you. And that saves you then 30, 45 minutes of writing the post yourself. We've also got a team of designers that we give everybody access to in case they want to focus their personal brand on Instagram. I'm very bullish on LinkedIn. I think that's actually the most business case in terms for the results we're looking to get. That's LinkedIn is a better business case for personal brand than Instagram, in my opinion, but I don't want to cap people. So I give people one of our copywriters. I let them have access to designers. Like with Ryan last week, I gave Ryan the platform to talk about something he's passionate about, which is ending human trafficking. We talked about it to this audience, to B2B Growth. We did a solo episode with him. So I'm giving him access to our audio channel. So whatever it is you have, maybe, we're an agency, so we have access to some of that talent. If you don't have those resources in-house, go hire a designer, hire a copywriter. It is going to make sense, because you're going to have that one resource help everyone on your sales team. And then say you have a 7 or 8 person sales team, it then makes a lot of sense to scale the influence that your sales team has in the marketplace by hiring one copywriter, $50,000, $60,000 a year. I don't know what copywriters are going for that are full-time copywriters, or find a contractor, like find somebody and give them as a resource to your sales team. And I promise you it will be a worthwhile investment. What are your thoughts on that, Logan, around kind of being equipped with resources to actually focus on your personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's very empowering for me as the salesperson, but I think it also, allows the company to scale that much faster, as opposed to, like you said, if you have 8 or 10 people on your sales team, they obviously, if they've been around for a while and they're successful salespeople, they're good in front of customers, they can communicate well. They might not be the best writers, or they might be a good writer, but they just don't have time. So how do you take what's in their head and from the things from their conversations that could be great content for their personal brand and the company's brand story, and get them out in front of eyeballs? And this strategy of breaking up the work, not just like harping on your sales team. If you're, not the people that are kind of quelching your salespeople's personal brand, but you're trying to get it out of them, but it feels like pulling teeth, then equip them with the resource to make it easy. And, with us, sometimes we turn podcast interviews and we just turn that audio over to the writer. If you don't have a podcast, like you said, set your salespeople up or other people up to have a conversation with a writer, or just record something and throw it into SoundCloud or something, and then give that link to the writer so that they can take those thoughts, massage them, and turn them into written content. It's going to scale so much faster.
Yeah. I mean, your salespeople are getting asked questions every single day. And I guarantee you that if they turn the questions that they're being asked into content, whether that's, creating a voice memo on their phone and then emailing that over to the copywriter, say, hey, I'd love to have a 1,300 character LinkedIn status update talking about this, maybe even a blog post that we put on the company's blog, that is such valuable content. And you're scaling your content creation through the lens of someone that actually, like, your salespeople might not all be great writers. I lucked out with you, Logan, because you actually are a journalism background. So you are a good writer. For you, it's just a time thing. Like, you just don't have the time to do it anymore. So that's when we started saying, okay, we'll use one of our writers to write for you. But by doing that, you've got quality control, because you're having a copywriter who knows the voice of the brand overall. That one of your sales reps isn't going to make the brand look foolish because they can't spell or they don't know sentence structure or whatever. But it's their thoughts that are being communicated, and that is going to be such valuable content both on social and on your website for SEO. So giving them the resources to create content is hugely, hugely important. And we touched on kind of content ideas. What do people actually talk about? If you've got somebody on your team that's like, okay, this is great. I want to focus on my personal brand. I understand the long-term benefits of it, but what do I say? I think you as the leader can help them come up with, like, how are they adding value to your team? And one, that's a great way for you to encourage your team and to tell them the strengths that you see in them. But I think two, it says, hey, with Andrew, I said, hey man, I love the system that you've implemented, that our workflow process now as a leadership team for how we're getting individual projects done. Man, talk about that on LinkedIn. Like, that's a brilliant system. And so he did, and it ended up being great content. So you as the leader, identifying strengths in your people and then encouraging them to write about that. But then I think you can even get more systematic about it. You could come up, we came up with a list of 60 different LinkedIn topic ideas that I've seen work really well on LinkedIn. And we could give our team access to that list of 60 ideas and say, hey, like, start here. If you don't have anything to say, if we've already run through like the 8, rock star qualities of you, we've already talked about that. Here's a list of, 6 ideas. Tell a story from your childhood that impacts how you do business today. Start answering questions that you commonly ask questions. I mean, there is no shortage of content ideas, but I think it's worth saying here that, you might run into people that don't necessarily know what to talk about. Have a plan for how to address that. Have a cadence of content that new employees can create, because you have a stable of 60 ideas. Be able to tell them, hey, like, jot down every question you get from a customer is a potential content idea. And then the third one being, call out their strengths, see what they're doing that's, incredibly helpful for the team, and encourage them to write about that. Because if it's helpful for you, it's probably going to be helpful for other leaders as well. And it tells them that you see them and that you're seeing greatness in them. And it's actually going to make them operate in that behavior even more so. When you call out the positive, that positive is going to rise to the surface more and more, because the people know that it's seen. So that's a great way, a combo of like encouragement plus getting content out of folks. So those are 3 tangible ways to resource them with ideas. And then we obviously hiring a designer, hiring copywriter, hiring someone that can actually help scale your team's content creation is the other element of that resourcing part. Logan, is there anything, I know this has been a longer episode. Is there anything around this idea? I just think this is so important. I really hope people grasp onto this. Is there anything that you think that we didn't touch that folks should know?
I mean, just a couple granular things that came out of, conversations internally here this week, create a list on Trello of those ideas. And I mean, your salespeople should be talking about, hey, this question came up. I never heard it before. And those sorts of things kind of in your sales meetings, you're probably bringing those together, but systematize that in a way that can lead to content creation. I think a Trello list or, a pinned list or starred list in Slack if your team is big on using Slack as a communication channel. So those are just to get super granular for folks in next steps, a couple of ideas if either of those tools are in your tool bag right now to make it easy for your salespeople to add to the file or add to the stockpile there of things for the writers to draw on or for them to go back to and work with the writer on after the fact. So yeah, I really hope that a lot of sales teams and a lot of teams in general, take some value from this because we've seen in just a short amount of time in the things that we've implemented here, a lot of benefits for the company overall and definitely from a sales perspective.
I totally agree, man. Logan, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much to you, the listener, for tuning in and for giving us your attention. It is greatly appreciated. We do not want to take your attention for granted. If you're active on LinkedIn, even if you're not, we'd love to connect with you there. Logan and I, if you couldn't tell from this episode, we hang out there a lot. James Carberry, Carbary, Logan Lyles, Lyles. Would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Tell us that you listen to the show. That makes our hearts and souls smile. Thank you so much. We love you a ton. Have a fantastic weekend. Thanks a lot.
Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/Impact Summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.